Hello, Sacred Artists. This is your host, Kendall, and I'm so excited you have joined me for this one because I get to introduce to you a wonderful woman of God who, for one, she is a professional dancer with Reading City Dance Company, all alongside being a full-time wife and mom to 2 young girls. So whether you're single like me or married and have a bunch of kids running around with your hubby and a creative career, look no further because my friend Hannah Decker gives us practical tips and wisdom on how to navigate this space with Jesus. So without further ado, let's get to the conversation. How have you, cultivated such a sacred practice? Being a full-time mom, juggling, being, a professional dancer, full-time wife, what does that look like for you?
I know 100% I would not be able to do this without the people around me. Community has been the first reason before Jesus that I can even consider pursuing my dreams in dancing. My mother-in-law is a huge part of even just like the technical stuff. She has been a support since day one, since I've had my first kid, and she watches them all the time for me. She's very good at like just supporting me, and there's been a lot of times where I've even wanted to give up because of guilt, and a lot of moms experience that, where just being away from your kid is really hard and feeling like, oh, I don't want other people raising my child.
Right.
She was a huge part of not letting me give up, and my husband was a huge part of not letting me give up because they both knew deep down, like, this is where my heart was for stuff. And this was the thing that I needed for myself, because a lot of moms don't allow themselves to have a moment, as opposed to like always serving and always giving to other people.
Sure. Yeah. Was there a specific moment or where that, you had that switch from, oh my gosh, this is who I am. I am an artist, I'm a dancer, but I'm also all these things. What was the switch for you?
So dancing has always been a part of my life. It's something I've always known that I've been passionate about. I've been at the same studio since I was 6. And I always knew that I thought I always wanted to be a teacher and a studio owner. So as a kid, I never, there was a part of me that wanted to be a professional dancer and to perform, but there was an even bigger part that really wanted to teach and be a part of the process with kids and own their own business. And when I was 15, God told me that at a houseboat camp that I was going to dance for him for the rest of my life. So my instant expectation was, I'm going to be a studio owner. Like that's the goal. That's the highest peak that I'm going to reach. And as the years went on, especially after I got married, I realized that God had a much bigger plan for me. And he had a deeper desire. And he wanted to fulfill 6-year-old Hannah's dreams of having this excellence as a dancer. When that shifted, that's when Reading City came into my life.
Okay.
And that's when, especially this year after doing this show with you and like all of us doing it together, that's when I realized that it's not full circle, but I'm starting to see the fruits of what God started even when I was 15 years old.
Right. Like the beautiful seeds that God has intentionally been planting all along. And it's like, now from subconscious to conscious, it's like, wow, this awareness. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing. I know for me, I can also relate fully of, it's so crazy you want to be a studio owner.
Yeah.
That's actually one thing I was wanting to do when I was younger. I actually did a project where I went with my studio owner. We went and she showed me the behind the scenes look of what it would look like to build a studio, which is essentially family. And so, tell us a little bit more of how family has really played a specific role, I would say, for example, as a single woman. How does that play out for you?
So even though I was single for obviously a very short time, my mom has always been my number one fan. Ever since I started, she always was the hugest supporter. And so even as a kid that wanted this career choice, she was always like, let's do this. Let's make this happen. Let's keep you in class. There was a time where she couldn't even pay for class. And so my grandparents stepped up and probably paid for like the first 10 years of my classes and costumes and all the stuff that comes with being a dancer.
Totally.
And so my family has always been very supportive. And I've never had to worry about like if they were proud of me or not. Because they loved what I was doing, and then they saw that it was something that was a part of me. And tap was actually my first love, and I know that's something we have in common.
I know, tap, fellow tappers, if you're out there. It is so rewarding.
Yep.
Super rewarding.
Tappers are amazing.
Really are
Tappers are smart and intelligent. They always have to think strategically. I just, Shirley Temple was my first.
Really?
Yeah, she was like everything to me as a little kid. And that's why I wanted to dance, because I was like, I want to be like Shirley Temple.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder sometimes like where, in connection with God, and he puts these little connections from movies or our circumstances around us to really inspire us. I know for me at my studio, I was the tap dancer. I was, part of that team, that community. And it sounds like in here in Reading, you were part of that as well. So I just love how, you can fulfill that Shirley Temple sort of dream of yours. And so that's so beautiful. And so yeah, let's transition. I'm just really curious because I feel like every artist, whether you know Jesus or not, hopefully cultivates some sort of practice, some sort of meditation where you're one with yourself. And so how has that looked like for you in your everyday life, home life, doing errands, that kind of thing?
I feel like my alone time with God is definitely different than, let's say, like a single woman.
Okay.
Because I don't have hours on end, or even like a moment, even an hour really of quiet time. I'm lucky if I get a nap in. Thankfully, my girls are really good sleepers, but really in the big scheme of things, I can't plan anything. Okay. So when I was 19, my alone time with God was complete silence, journaling. I could go to the park and sit under a tree and have that alone time and not have to worry about if someone's going to wake up or someone's going to cry.
Wow.
So what I've discovered being a mom and a wife is that I have to be very strategic about my time with God. And so I do wake up early most of the time.
Okay.
If I miss that time, I'm not getting quiet time that day. So I've learned what it really looks like to incorporate God in everything. And you know how they say, like, for worship, like, it's not just singing, it's doing everything in your day. And how can I involve God in that? And so my conversations with God are very different every single day. So sometimes he'll be like, hey, here's a moment. Why don't you go dance over there? And it's probably like 2 minutes. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. Let's have just like a little moment together. When my daughter is sleeping, I'm usually physically tired. So like I want to be able to move, but sometimes I'm like so physically drained that I need more rest. So I try to be very discerning about listening to my body and listening to my heart and just saying, you know what, I need to take a minute and I just need to go to bed. Right. And I honestly consider that time with God too, because I'm honoring what rest looks like and posturing myself in a place of rest so that I can do more in the future. But also like my bed is my safe place. It's a place where I feel like, in the sense that I can cuddle with the Lord.
Come on.
And have snuggle time.
You put that, it's like your robe.
Yes.
So it's your comforter.
I have one of those really plush, like soft blankets that I got for my birthday. And I just love that thing so much.
Yeah. And I think that is so beautiful because that is sacred. That is intimacy with the Lord. That is, God, thank you for the little things. Thank you for the pleasure of a blanket on my skin, how amazing and comforting that feels, and I just love that. And making that intentional choice every day to invite him into that sacred place. How have you been able to give yourself grace, for example, from the transition of has to look like something to allowing it to flow naturally? I know for me, as a single woman, I am in that place where I don't have kids yet. I don't have a husband. I don't have those kind of responsibilities. So I'm challenged to not maybe put God in a box of like a certain time. So what would you say to an artist, single or not, that is cultivating that space in a fresh way?
Yeah. I've definitely learned with having kids that you have to let go of a lot of things or you're not going to get anything done. I think that goes really well with our expectations on God, like how we set them. Right. And the night that we were all hanging out as a company, Whitney said something that really resonated with me. And then like I kind of had an internal thought with God that if you're putting God in a box, it's too big of a box, or too small of a box, sorry. Wow. If you're putting God in a box, it's too small of a box. So I've just really had to learn, and I was able to cultivate this practice through another friend on Instagram that was initiating these holy devotional dances during Easter. And so she gave us a verse, and then she gave us a prompt of how that time alone needed to look like. So even just like actually like mentally training my mind and mentally training my body to not be a performer and to actually just invite people into the one-on-one time that was already happening with God was a good way to even just step out of any expectations I had. And there was one of the devotionals where I was trying to make a performance out of it. I was trying to get the lighting perfect. I was trying, all the stuff we do as dancers. And I probably made like 10 videos and then deleted them.
Right.
And then God wouldn't, like, my heart wasn't settled. Like I didn't feel like it was something that was honoring that prompt. So I had to go to bed. And then the next morning it only took one video, and God's like, go dance on the bed. And I was like, I do like the bed. So I did a whole clip where I'm just dancing on the bed, and there was no pressure on it. There was no, I had to look a certain way, and there was a freedom in that, stepping into that.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's so real for many, including myself. That moment where I think as artists, we were approached with, I am an artist, I'm a performer. I know for me last year doing first year ministry school, I came in thinking, I am a performer, and cultivating that secret place by myself, one-on-one, like you just shared, is just so intimate. But there came this moment when I would be stepping out on stage, for example, worshiping the Lord, where I caught myself trying to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, have a movement for every count.
Yeah.
And God's like, just let go. It doesn't need to look like something. It could be free flowing. Will you allow me to flow through that, and just the beauty of in allowing God's presence to flow in and through you is such I think a positioning of the heart to be like, okay, I'm not just doing this to look like something, it's more of to be one with God. And so I'm just curious, because you've been in Reading for some time now.
27 years.
27 years. Wow. That is crazy. So you've seen a lot evolve here. You've been part of a church. Which church have you been part of?
My family grew up in Little Country Church.
Okay.
And so I've been there up until recently. Me and my husband joined a smaller church called Gather Reading.
Okay.
And we just needed like a shift in our lives. My husband started his career 2 years ago. And so we were looking for a smaller community of people. And so we're currently at Gather.
So good. So where was the shift as far as, because I know for me, my background in dancing before the Lord, I mean, I've been dancing since I was 3, I'm 26, but haven't always had that heart positioning of I'm dancing for Jesus. It only was about like 4 years ago that really became a reality. So is that something you did growing up, or was it a certain encounter you had? And if so, what that looked like?
For me, I've always wanted to figure out what that looked like. And so a lot of it was me doing it on my own in my studio, and maybe having 1 or 2 friends be able to go through that process with me.
Yes.
I don't think I ever really discovered what worship with God looks like in more of a community worship setting until about 4 or 5 years ago as well.
Right.
And I always laughed at the people or mocked the people that were like at the sundial dancing.
Right.
And I'd laughed and would make fun of them and say, I'm never going to be that
I'm
person.
not going to be that. And you are that person
And now
now.
I'm that person.
I love it. I love it. You're like, I'm there already. Gosh.
Yeah. I've learned that if you make fun of something, God has a sense of humor and he's going to make you do that thing.
Absolutely. And you're like, I'm this person.
Yep.
Dang it.
But at the same time, it opened up my eyes so much to what connection looks like.
Wow.
I always separated the two. Like, there's studio dancing here. Like, how can dance actually be incorporated in worship? And a lot of it was self-doubt, I discovered. And so stripping away that self-doubt, especially when I had a community of people. And there was one year at Reading City where it was just 4 of us. And I was the only apprentice and the rest were core members. And they just, they spoke into me that entire year. And that's when Hannah the Brave came up. That's like my title at the company.
Yes, you are.
And that was before I was actually brave. They gave me that name before I even showed that type of personality. And so that year, I was going through a lot emotionally. Like, I've always struggled with depression. And then when you become a wife and a mom, those things fester and come to the surface. So it's really hard to hide it. So they were speaking love and truth into me. And there was a time when we went to Modesto to do a dance conference. And we were just doing an informal performance, and I was performing with all of my core member friends, feeling like I was more of an extra as opposed to a significant part
Wow.
in this piece. Even though I had like a significant part in this piece, I convinced myself it wasn't that significant. And the cool thing about this performance is that there was feedback, and so I had zero expectation of getting any type of positive feedback on myself. I knew like they'd talk about my friend and they talk about this. And the first thing that came out of someone's mouth was, I really like that tall girl. She was amazing. Yes. She was beautiful. And they just started like affirming me. I couldn't handle it. I started crying. So I had to run to the back. Wow. And my friend followed me. My beautiful friend followed me. And we just had this beautiful moment. And like, there was this release for me after that day.
So good.
And there was this shift that happened where I started really believing that I was worth something and believing that Hannah the Brave was actually a thing.
Wow.
And a little side thing, I've had nightmares my whole life. I stopped having nightmares that day.
Yeah, you did. Woo!
It was just like,
Jesus.
Yeah, it was one of those like just it all happened in one moment thing. And I didn't ever got many of those. So this was like a very significant part of my life.
Wow.
That helped me kind of turn a road and start walking in what I knew God wanted me to be in.
Come on.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. It definitely seemed like there was a fork in the road, and God was just like preparing you to encounter him, and then it happened, and then God did that. That's amazing. And when was that exactly?
That's a good question. I think it was 2016, 2017.
Okay, so not too long ago.
Not really.
Wow. So very similar timelines of God coming in and breaking through, and interesting. It reminds me of personal encounters I've had and just God's kindness of knowing the importance of community. And that's what, as you're talking, because we've both been dancing since we were super young, you know? And so we've been in family environments, community environments. And I'm just curious, what do you think is, what is the difference, you would say, from the community you had growing up in the studio world to Reading City Dance Company, where it was like a select few? And I know for me, I was in a company where we didn't really talk about Jesus. I felt like I was one of the only believers. Yeah. And then I was like, God, I want to be around a company of believers. What would that look like? So, yeah.
Even though I do have people in my old studio that were believers, I was very fortunate to still have very loving people around me. So all of the stigmas of being too tall or being too whatever, like, was never put on me. I was always celebrated about like the body that I was given, and the studio I was at is so good at celebrating all body types and all types of people.
That's really good.
And so the difference though was that I needed the Jesus community. I needed people that could relate to me in that sense. So I felt like I was searching for that for a very long time. And then also because I was in a leadership role since I was 13 years old at that studio, I was also hungry for being a student again. Right. And hungry for, because they're a studio, they more focus on high schoolers and junior hires, which is such a beautiful thing. Right. And I'm so glad that our community as Reading has that. But once I was getting into my 20s, I was kind of looking more for like my age group or older. I was looking for the more like technical stuff in that sense. So my studio was always my home away from home. Right. And I still I've been with my friend Ivana, she's the owner of the other studio. I've known her since I was born because she was pregnant with her son, her twins, at the same time my mom was pregnant with me. Wow. So there's like a lot of love there and a lot of support there. And I'm very fortunate to have that growing up, because I know most dancers don't get that, where their body is celebrated or that they're celebrated as humans before dancers.
It's really incredible to be reminded that at the core of your life all these years, it's been God putting people around you and pointing you in the direction, not knowing fully that God had only a few years ago to encounter you in a deep way, and just knowing how beautiful in God's kindness he would bring about those people. And what makes, you said earlier, something about excellence, it is a core value of the kingdom. And so I'm just curious to hear your perspective on excellence, because that is, I know for me, a reason why God, I believe, brought this dream up for me personally, again, to be a dancer, to, go the professional route, is this thing of honoring your craft, honoring the passion, the gifts that God has given you. Because I know as a young kid, I don't know if you can relate, but sometimes it was just, oh, I'm in class because it's super fun and I enjoy it and it's a good workout and that kind of thing. And then now it's even deeper. It's like the excellence of, God, you have given me this gift to display for your glory. And I feel the responsibility to honor that in community and to be able to love people exactly where they're at. So what does that look like for you in your process of excellence? And
for me, I feel like with having a teacher background, I've seen a lot of what works and what doesn't work in terms of facilitating young minds, especially. And I think that the reason why people go into maybe more harsh name calling or body shaming is because that's an easier route as opposed to showing kindness, because kindness takes longer. Kindness is a much more patient, longer process. And I think both spectrums, like you can't be extreme on either of them.
Right.
Because there does need to be that tough love, which is in the middle, which is something that God, I think, shows us on a daily basis, because there are times where he has to be that hard parent that says, you need to wake up right now and you need to go because it's time.
So good.
I think that with kindness, sometimes it takes longer, but sometimes there is a thing where people do take too long and then they sacrifice excellence for feeling, which feelings are great, but there needs to be this this thing where you actually are like working hard, and it's okay to have sweat and tears. It's okay to be pushing. And then that probably comes from my jazz side too, because we were trained to drill a lot.
Right.
And I find I have this weird like passion for like just drilling. I'm just like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. I think it's the, because of our nature as women, there is, I know for me, I'm still learning about this, but there is that feminine side of us, but there also is that masculine kind of side of us of like, the masculine, even just having guy friends, it's like they're very driven, they have women, we can have goals too, but it helps me get things done.
Yes.
And there's that feminine side that's super soft and nurturing. And I believe, both of us, men and women, have both sides. And I think to your point, that is really important to realize and understand as an artist, both sides. Because, if we're constantly, for example, going, and we don't actually take a moment and to be still and nurture ourselves and love ourselves. And so I know for me, when in thinking about loving oneself in this past, 6-7 months, God has been calling me to actually slow down enough to hear my body. And I have tapped in so much to my feminine because of it. Yeah. And there's been times when I've been really offended because I have, been going my whole life. I mean, going to school when I was younger, I would go to school, go to dance practice. I was always that go-getter. And then it's interesting now in my 20s of like, God is intentionally giving me the opportunity these past 6 months to really unwind with him of, okay, you're an artist, you're a performer, you're a creative, you can do many things. That's great. But at what cost? Are you going to forsake your feminine side, that soft side of you that's so beautiful and tender? I've given you that gift. Or are you going to, let it just be hidden? And so I'm just curious, like practical things. I know I've been learning a lot, but how do you love yourself throughout your days or weeks? And for example, I was thinking about this on the way here is, okay, we had our show, right? Yes. We had our show, You and Me, Us, and it was amazing. We worked so hard. I know the core members, you and the core, were just, going after practices even more than we were, and as trainees. And I was just thinking like, my gosh, you're a mom and you're a wife and you're doing all these practices. How did you love yourself? What did that look like? Like from, if that was boundaries or if that was, taking a bath. What did that look like?
It's definitely like a lot of finding moments of pampering. I love Epsom salt baths.
Yes, girl.
Lots of chocolate for sure. I'm very much like in my love language, physical touch is one thing. So I actually, during that show, I texted my mom and I asked her for a massage. And
Okay.
for me, asking for help is a very difficult thing. So in the past couple of years, I've learned I can't do this alone, especially because I'm a mom of two. I need people around me. So when I feel the most broken down, I try to catch it now before like I'm at the end of everything that I'm going through. But I try to catch it early and be like, hey, I'm getting to that point. Will you please come here right now? So I have actually a list of people that I can call, and I've written down that list because when
good.
you're in the middle of feeling physically drained or you're depressed or something, you can't think straight. So I've learned like
Right.
writing down that list of people that I know I can depend on for that specific thing, and even talking to them about it, saying, hey, if I get to this point, will you be there for me?
Wow.
Then I have it.
That's so wise, I would say.
My husband gave me that advice before I had my second.
That's great. I'm taking that right now.
Yeah.
Of it seems very practical to have like that on-call group of people.
Yes.
In thinking about your circle, so that exact list.
Yeah.
What are some characteristics you look for in certain people to invite into that inner circle? Just like Jesus did, he had the few, but he had the group. Just for any artist out there, I love what you're just saying. It's been so real of like, you're during a show, you are like, I need help. I've capped and I need that help. So, for those that are listening, single, married, on Broadway, whatever, what are some tips, advice you would give them for, finding that community?
Definitely putting yourself out there. Not even looking too far and just seeing what you see on a daily basis. Like, it doesn't have to be someone so far out there. Like, maybe you have someone that is next door, like a neighbor, or someone that is going through the same stuff as you in class, that you guys can relate because you struggle with the same thing.
Yeah.
For me, plugging into a church was a big support system.
That's so good.
So I literally have like a group of 10 people that are my prayer circle. And so having, even like, because we have phones and we have Instagram, like, they don't have to physically be there. If you are a person that need words of encouragement and that's how you process things, like creating a circle of people that you can text and just having a group there.
That's so good. Like having a group message where you can just be like, this is what I'm struggling with. I need prayer.
Yeah.
Asking for help. That's so good. That's super helpful. I worked at a camp at one point in my life, and one of the activities we did was with campers, even adults, where we would be in the forest. I was in Texas, actually, and they would have to hold the tightrope, and they'd be blindfolded, and I would be like, hey, raise your hand when you need help. But I would say, when you see the light, raise your hand. And so basically the objective was for people to come into awareness of how long are they willing to go and not asking for help. And so there would always be that one person, sometimes 2 or 3 kids and adults, that were like, I can do it on my own. And we'd be waiting there. And it was almost like all of us were, even me as a facilitator, were looking at the kid or the adult and being like, all these people are willing to help, but it takes, I think, laying down something, right? Laying down whatever that looks like, your pride, feeling like you can do it all on our own. And so I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, a big reason why I think for me it's hard to ask for help is because I don't want to be a burden to people. I think that my problems aren't as big as someone else's problems. And so I convince myself that it's not worth dealing with. And then that's when it starts to escalate,
Right.
is when I see the red flag and I don't even like do anything about it.
Right. So how does that look like, because you're married now?
Yeah.
And for all those that are listening, even for me, when I get married, how does that look like in your marriage to ask for help or to even communicate that, as an artist, as a woman in general?
It's been a very long process for me and my husband because I met him when I was 16. We're actually going on 8 years of marriage in a couple weeks. We're 4 years apart, and we're definitely, in terms of communication, in terms of how we process things emotionally, we are the complete opposite.
Okay.
I think for us, and I think for every marriage, communication is so important, and being 100% honest with them, not assuming that they know your feelings or how you're feeling has been a big one for me.
Right.
He is very much a go-getter. If you're involved in the Enneagram, he's a type 8. He's a challenger.
Yeah.
I'm a type 2. I'm a helper. And so we just process things completely differently. So I've learned the best way that I can honor him, but also honor myself, is being straightforward with him and not trying to put hints down of, oh, the living room's so messy right now. And instead, just saying, hey, I really need help on this living room. Can you please find time to help me clean it up? That just being more straightforward has been very helpful. Even with my emotions, because I had my baby 9 months ago, I'm dealing with depression again. And that's a very common thing to have after having a kid. It's just kind of like I don't want to say a letdown, but like your emotions are just roller coasters.
Right.
And you're dealing with things that you're not used to. And so it just gets very stressful. And so I've been a lot better this time around, just telling him, I'm having a really bad day today. And he's doing really good, even just checking in and saying, hey, how's today been for you? Things like that. Like just being in constant communication is the best thing you do in regards to facilitating friendship and marriage with your person.
Right. And so it sounds like you guys were friends. That's what you met young, but you got married later. I think that's beautiful. It seems like, how was that friendship? Was that just in cultivating that?
That friendship is for sure, besides Jesus, the foundation of why we do so good together.
Wow.
He was a high school leader, and I was one of the high school students.
So in high school you guys met. That's awesome.
Yeah, because he was 4 years, we were 4 years apart. I was 16 and he was 20. So when we first met, there was a lot of shame put on even just us having feelings for each other. And it took me up until this last year to even be really proud of where we came from, because yes, usually that does not work out. That is a terrible idea. It worked out for us, and it was because we started as friendship. Like our biggest thing was going to concerts together, and he's a very funny guy. So I needed someone that tickled my funny bone and just and that's one thing he does now too, is he's so good at making me laugh, even when I'm sad.
Yeah.
And so that friendship cultivated for 2 years before we even started dating.
Okay.
And then I believe it was like a year and a half or 2 years after that is when we got engaged.
Oh my gosh.
We got married.
It sounds so, I've seen you guys together and you light up when you're with him. And I think it doesn't even matter what age you guys met. I think God is in the business to write some amazing love stories. And it seems, just seeing the fruit of your friendship, it's seen through your children. Just seeing your babies, and they're just super happy, and you are inviting them into your intimacy with Jesus and what you've cultivated with him in the secret place, and even, dancing with your children. And so how does that look like? I know we're going to share with you guys through the socials how they dance together and stuff, but it seems like that's been a bonding time for you guys. How does that
Yes,
work?
Especially with my 5-year-old. She's always loved to dance, and she's very much into ballet, which is so fun for me because I was not into ballet when I was her age. I was into tap.
Yeah.
And I love that she is basically, I'm just doing me. I'm just doing what I'm passionate about, and she sees it. Yeah. And she's watching and she's catching on. And for her, this is like normal for us to just be dancing and singing about everything that we're doing. Right. And what I love also about that is that my husband is also starting to realize that culture. And he's always been a dancer. Like he won't be the person that dances out in public, but in his house, he is a big goofball when it comes to dancing.
Love that.
And so even him and my daughter will always, if music's on, we're dancing.
Yes.
And I've been especially with the devotions I did during Easter, the fact that my daughter wanted to do that, and because one year we did do improv an entire year with the company, I have the tools to be able to just play. And that was the theme of that year, was just being a kid again and playing. And she is a kid, so who better to be able to cultivate that than her?
Right.
And so she's even been showing me again what it looks like to be a child and to be silly and to just basically dance around the room, just play and just be fun and be girls again.
Yeah, just be able to put on. I know, no shame. I watched Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen.
Oh my gosh.
I had that moment.
Wow.
God was like, watch this movie because it's all about New York, and New York's been on my mind. But I was taken back to my childhood, and I was like, may I never lose sight of this child within me that is, can even put what's that one song, Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield, or just putting on songs from the youth to remind us of where we've come from, and to never lose sight of that childlike wonder. Yes. And I'm just curious of what you would say from your own perspective of like, I know as an artist, as a dancer, sometimes we could get so, if you're not careful, caught up in becoming so excellent, you get so tense and you lose sight of that childlike wonder or that playfulness.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious of what you would suggest as a way to counteract that tendency that maybe, an artist who's wanting to become professional, that's like, I want to be excellent at my work and my craft, and also I'm a full-time mom or not, what are your thoughts on that?
I definitely was that person, and I can be that person if I don't catch it. When I was with Reading City in the first year, and I was very fortunate to have friends that caught that, and I even realized as a dancer that my breathing was off. And so, like, even physically speaking, breathing into movement was a huge game changer for me. I hold a lot of tension in where like your shoulder blades are, all the way up to your neck. So if I'm not breathing, those things are going to get tense. I was introduced to Gaga also because of Jedi. Yeah. And even just that style has helped me also realize what release looks like. And then even just talking from a neurological point, just remembering to not take things so seriously, but also have excellence on it, finding that balance. I realized that if I was walking into class and bringing all of the stress I had, but not giving it to the Lord before class or even during class as I was moving, I was going to leave hurt physically. Like all that tension that I was holding up, it was just going to affect me later.
Right.
So I think it comes from a neurological place, and it comes from a place of wanting to look excellent as opposed to letting yourself internally be excellent.
Yeah. And also too, from what I hear, it sounds like you've become very well accustomed to actually listening to your body.
Yeah.
You have stopped. You take a moment to check in with yourself consciously, because I think sometimes we could subconsciously, I know I did this, is like put down, shove down, oh, I'm hurting right now, I'm going to push through this choreography or this class, even though I don't want to, complete the class for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So I know we went to a whole week-long dance trip with our company to ACDA. So how did that look like for you? An example where you were like, I need to have personal boundaries with myself, or how did that look like?
This last year was definitely more of picking the fruits of what I've cultivated in previous years of going to conferences. There was a conference that I went to where I was pregnant. And so I feel like, obviously, like definitely being pregnant, you have to be aware of your body. If you're not, you are going to hurt yourself. And so I learned a lot of breathing through that. I've learned a lot of neurological shifts in my mind, letting myself to actually breathe through the pain as opposed to holding in the pain when you get to that place in your movement. You're like, oh, here it comes, and like kind of anticipating it.
Yes.
Actually letting it release, I notice like 99% of the time solves the problem. Obviously, there's things that you like, spraining your ankle. Like you can't breathe through that. You should not be dancing. This year, I think that my mind was in a better place, but the struggles I did have was that I was still pumping and breastfeeding.
Okay.
So this whole year, because my daughter's only 9 months old, and you've seen me around with my breast pump,
I'm like, go girl.
You have to just like kind of allow yourself to stop. And that came with a nutritional thing, because I was pumping, like you lose a ton of calories and a lot of energy just from pumping or breastfeeding. So I really had to allow myself to eat all the time and be okay with that, and not like hurt myself just because I'm like, oh, I'm eating too much. Actually, I was listening to my body, and I am a 6-foot woman. I need a lot of food. I need protein.
Absolutely.
In general. So then you throw dancing. How long were we dancing that day? Like
hours.
Yeah, from 8 to 4.
Yeah,
easily
4 or 5 days.
Yeah,
straight.
and so exercising all day, breastfeeding, needing that normal protein or water intake, like you just have to accept that everyone's body is different and they're going to need different things. And I think it's so easy as dancers as well is to look at the other person and say, oh, they're not eating that much, so I shouldn't eat that much, or they're doing something that way, so maybe I should follow them because it looks like it's working for them.
Right. Yeah, that's so true, because we're all unique and we're all different. We all respond to things differently. And I know for me, when I was on that trip, I had a reality check. because I've had my diet here in Reading and haven't been taking like dance classes that consistently, I guess, 5 at a time, 5 days in a row. It like took me back to when I was dancing in Southern California. And there came a moment where in a few classes, I'm like, God, I'm just exhausted. I want to take this African salsa class because that's just who I am. I want to connect with that style of movement. But God's like, you don't have to.
Yeah.
And I was like, what am I trying to prove right now? Like, am I trying to prove something to myself or, but just knowing to honor our bodies and be able to be like, hey, you can sit this one out. It's okay. You are seen in my eyes as your father, and like you are a dancer and artist. And I know at one moment I was like, oh my gosh, I just need to have meat because I didn't realize, but I had to eat more protein, of course, to sustain myself. And so I had no shame in getting a full like meatball sandwich sub. I ate the whole thing. It was so good, but I was just like, okay, like God, you're breaking things off through this sandwich moment right now. And it just makes me realize, wow, like that is such, I think, a training ground in our hearts and our minds and as artists to actually listen, to stop, and to also respond, because we can shove it down or we can respond in love to ourselves. And so I love this. It's so awesome. And so just to end some things, I wanted to ask you, what song do you have on your iPhone right now that is really speaking to your current season, that you're like, this is, moving me. This is helping me get through something. Just because as artists, we all have, we all can connect to music, at least, both of us. And so.
Yes. Like I said before, I'm going through the process of postpartum depression again. And the difference between this time is allowing God into it. And so the song I've been listening to recently is Open Up, Let the Light In by Stephanie Gretzinger. That's literally all she says in the song. It's this beautiful piano, and like just it kind of makes you want to move. But then she's just affirming, open up, let the light in, open up, let the light in. And for me, like saying words over and over again and keeping things simple is the way I process time with the Lord. And so that song has been, in the past, like probably 5 days, have been on repeat for me, just affirming myself of whatever's going on, to just open myself up, allow vulnerability to happen, allow people in, ask people for help, things like that.
So good. I love that. It's just letting the light come into that space in our heart to just infiltrate every other part of our lives, essentially. Oh, so good. And so with that, as a sacred artist, what is your hope and declaration over the worldwide creative community?
So the thing that I really hope that people get out of even my story is that dreams are important from God. Like God finds dreams super important. He cares about what your desires are, and that I'm even learning that, like, I used to always think, what's the point of praying if God already has a plan? But God can even be swayed by our desires. He can see what's in our hearts and say, you know what, like, I really want to put that in your life, as opposed to I already have a plan for you. And I've been thinking about Ep.3, and it talks about how he is so much bigger than all of this and that he does care about our dreams. It says, now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think, according to the power at work within us. To him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. And just even going with my story, that he said I was going to dance for the rest of my life, me putting expectations on that, but then him actually going over my expectations. Because for me, my expectations were the peak.
Right.
I thought that was it. But he's like, actually, like, you should go up like 500 feet because there's so much more that I have planned for you. And it's really funny how we do cut ourselves short, or we try to think realistic, especially when kids are involved and a spouse is involved, that, oh, because I'm this, I have to let this go. And that's coming from a sacrificial heart, which is what, like, especially with marriage, like, you got to put your marriage first and your kids first. But the fact that my husband didn't let me give up even 4 years ago. Every year I'm like, I always fight this battle. Should this be my last year? And he's like, no, you are not giving up. Like, you got to keep doing this. Having that support system is so important. So I just really hope that moms especially are encouraged by my testimony and realize that they don't have to give up their dreams, that when it comes to life, like, and having kids, you just have to plan more. Because, like, obviously we can't go to the movies on a whim, but you can plan to go to the movies. You can
Totally
figure this stuff out. You just have to, it takes a lot more time to actually sit down and give yourself grace and give yourself patience, like you would give someone else, so that, like, God gives to other people.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. It speaks to me so much as a single woman that aspires, to be a mom one day and to step into that role. It's just, thank you for sharing your heart with us. And I think it'd be really cool if you could just pray over our listeners and just release whatever you want feel the Lord releasing. Yeah, go for it.
Wow, God, thank you so much for using my testimony and always being present in my life, God. And I just thank you for artistic people, that it's coming from a heart that already existed in you, and that you're giving that to your children, God, that you are an artistic God, and that all of us have a different perspective on what our art looks like, God, and that you celebrate that. And so I just ask for freedom, God, in people's minds, that you would create a rewiring into their minds that are maybe malfunctioned, in the sense that they see themselves a certain way, God, that you would open up their perspective of what they look like, God, and how you are working in them. And I ask for the moms that are artistic as well and feel like they have to lay it down, that they would just be in constant communication with you on what that looks like, God, so that they can see that you are in works and that you care about what they're doing. And I pray for the people who are single that think they can't get married because they're a dancer. But the truth is, God, that that you care about that relationship. So I just pray freedom over what people are limited to think that they are doing, God, because you are a limitless God, and that you cannot be fit inside a box, that you want to exceed that box, and you want to create trailblazers and people that are going to create new roads. And so we thank you for those people, God, and we just ask that we are in constant relationship with you, so that we can walk into that very, very confidently, God. So thank you. Amen.
Well, there you have it, folks. That was my conversation with the incredible Hannah Decker, and I'm so excited that you were able to join me. If this encouraged you in any way, feel free to share this with your friends and your family, and leave us a review on whatever platform you found us on. If you want to follow along with Hannah Decker in her journey, go to thesacredartistpodcast.com, where you can find more information about her on the show notes page. And also, this is where you can sign up for our newsletter. It was a privilege being with you guys today. Thanks so much for joining, and I'll talk with you soon. Bye.